those lights out of the thing.
Well, I just went live, so we're live.
I see that.
Hi, guys. So, welcome to Geeky Cool Presents, and today we have the Skallywag and Ace. Professor is moving. Wow. Oh, the contact. So,
I
Professor's
haven't worn them
moving.
in a while, so I had to throw them on.
Yeah, well, they look good. Professor's moving today. If you guys have been watching on Geeky Cool, one, our site is still down. We are working on getting a new host for our GeekyKOOL.com, but you can follow us still on Facebook and Twitter. And then Professor had there was a storm that came through, a tree fell on his house, and they're having to do all kinds of stuff, and they're having to move into an apartment. So they're moving today, so we are going to cover for him, and we're not going to talk about what we were like initially going to talk about because it was going to be the professor and I. So Shrew and I have decided we came up with a really cool idea. We have weird conversations all the time, so this is just one of our weird conversations, and we decided to share it with
One
you
of
guys.
many. Yes.
Yes, yes. So I just want to throw in. I am trying to do this thing here, but you can find Shpoo over at Skallywag Productions on YouTube. Yeah. And
And
he's
it's just youtube.com/Skallywag Productions. It'll take you right to me.
yep. He's also on Instagram and Twitter. Anything else? You on anything else?
Facebook.
Facebook. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. We're always on Facebook. And then get to check us out at GeekyKOOL.com. Like I said, our site is down, but you can check us out at GeekyKOOL.com on Facebook, and we're also on Twitter as well. So, okay. So, today we have decided that we're going to talk comic book movies because Shmoo and I are both huge movie fans. We're both huge comic book fans, and
Yes.
um, we both are very disappointed when we leave movies a lot of the time. So, so
And we're
we
going to, so specifically, we're talking about the problems that we have with all comic book movies. And we're going to attempt, as much as possible, at least until the very end, only if we need to fill time, to leave X-Men out of this entirely, because that could be its own 3 or 4 hour conversation.
right. I mean, we have one issue that we have with a lot of comic book movies that is titled it an X Men thing, but we'll get to that here in just a second. So,
Actually, I can sum up X-Men. I can sum it up right now. The problem with the X-Men movies,
yes.
everything.
Oh,
Just everything. Everything.
yes,
All
yes.
of it.
Oh my goodness. No, we both have problems with a lot of superhero movies and how they
Yes.
handle our.
So I had to wear my Brightburn shirt for this.
We have problems with like superhero movies and how they handle our superheroes and our supervillains. And we've
Yeah.
actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 actual like points that we want to make and that we're going to discuss. If you guys have any points or want to discuss anything or join in, please, please, please post in the comments on Facebook. It takes me a while for StreamYard to get us to connect, but I will answer them and we will post them and stuff like that. So if you want to do that and join in, be sure to do that, okay? And I am going to get back over here and hold on, get to the comments.
Should I kick
Okay,
it up?
yeah, always.
One of my biggest problems, and especially the problems that we are addressing today are going to be pretty universal. So it's not just Marvel, it's not just DC, it's every comic book movie that's ever come out. MCU in particular, however, extremely guilty with this first one, that being masks or lack thereof.
Yes.
The MCU doesn't like people wearing masks because you got to see that star on screen.
Right.
You got to see their beautiful faces. You have it covered up with a mask that is the character that you came to see.
Right.
That would be bad.
Superheroes, like not many of them don't have like masks or secret identities or costumes or something. I mean, you know, we can go into like Clark Kent versus Superman. He has glasses. Okay,
Sure.
that's a costume. But there are other ones like Batman, Spider-Man. I mean, you had a good point about Spider-Man. Even
Spider-Man Far From Home has a scene where they even go as far as to have Nick Fury say, everybody in this room already knows you're Peter Parker, so you can go ahead and take your mask off.
right.
Just, yeah. Which our first 2 points kind of go hand in hand. The first point was masks. The second point is the point we're calling identity crisis. Because, like, I understand that the movie star in the movie is the star-powered draw for people to come see this movie. However, they're coming to see the movie because it is the character that they are portraying.
Right.
So for a Batman movie, for example, to be accurate, there should only be maybe 2 scenes in the whole movie where the mask comes off. One, so that we can remind people that, oh yeah, by the way, this guy is also Bruce Wayne.
Right.
And 2, the second scene should be him in the Batcave, still got the rest of the costume on, but he's got the cowl pulled back while he's like working on the Bat computer or something. Those should be the only times that mask ever comes off.
Right. So, and the thing is like, I get it. They hire good-looking actors most of the time. Like I can't think of one actor who's not good-looking, or at least I might not think he's good-looking, but they're think that they're good-looking. Don't give me that. But and they want to showcase that, but at the same time, it goes even more than the mask. And our second point is more than the mask, but it goes to more than the mask because you literally are stripping away their secret identities. Like you,
yes,
for everyone. And Batman is the prime example because in the comics, Batman is Batman more than he is Bruce Wayne. The comics are based.
Bruce Wayne is the mask. Batman is the man.
Right. And so there's more times in the comics where you see Batman. First of all, you don't want to follow around a rich guy and just see what he does all day. You're into well, it's true. I mean, unless you're like Donald Trump's Secret Service or something
There's
like
reality TV for that.
Right. But you want to see him fight crime, and he doesn't fight crime as Bruce Wayne. He fights crime as Batman. I understand the idea that they don't want to pay these high salaries and not get their money's worth, but it doesn't. It takes away from the story, and it takes
the
away
perfect example. The absolute perfect example of this is Dredd. Entire movie, Carl Urban, you never once see his face. All you see is this much of his face right here. And he pulls it off beautifully. Beautifully. One of my favorite comic book movies ever. And you never see his face.
Not a comic book, but The Mandalorian has proven that they can emote all kinds of range without showing the face.
Just a stance.
Yes.
The position of your head.
Yeah. So I agree. I think that masks are something that, like masks or their outfits or something like that, and they spend way more time as their other identity, or they show their other identity way more, and
which kind of flows into our second point, where so many, now there's a few exceptions to the rule on this one, but so many comic book movies have gotten to a point where they're only in costume for about 1/3 of the movie. And that's being generous. The other 2/3 of the movie is them running around and playing. Look at Winter Soldier is an example I threw out in our conversation earlier, where Cap puts on the suit a few times throughout the movie, but for more than half of that movie, he's running around in plain clothes, just with a hat and sunglasses and a jacket on. It's the Steve Rogers adventure. I didn't go to see Steve Rogers, the Winter Soldier. I went to see Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I mean, that's just one example. But yes, we didn't see the Bruce Wayne story. We came to see the Batman story, the Captain America story, the Spider-Man story, whatever it happens to be.
Now there are exceptions to like those, like there should be some points where you see their secret identity or something like
Sure.
that, to clarify like their humanity and stuff. But for the most part, you want to see them as their comic book hero character. You don't want to see them as their everyday Joe kind of person.
Right.
That's why we go see these movies. That's why we read comic books. We want to.
That's
like
one of the biggest things that people hated about Iron Man 3. It was the Tony Stark movie. It wasn't the Iron Man movie. He's Iron Man at the very beginning. He's Iron Man again at the very end, and really only for little bits and pieces of that. And then the rest of the movie, it's him and a kid. It's like, it's annoying.
Right. So our second point is identity crisis, which goes
We're
into
kind of already there.
it kind of flows. We've thought about this.
Yeah.
But identity crisis, but what I take from that is not only we need to see more of them as who of the heroes they are, but actually be comic book accurate. I hate it when they aren't, and
We'll
then
come back to that.
right. And our next one is that, but I just hate it when they like have an identity crisis. Like you don't know if they want, unless it's part of the story. Like if they decide they don't want to be a superhero anymore, and then you see them as being a regular person, that's different. But if it's just
that's something that's a storyline that probably shouldn't have been brought into a movie in the first place.
Exactly. But it happens. It happens sometimes. It's a terrible thing. It's but no, I just feel like the identity crisis and the fact that so many of these movies have so many people know who the people are.
Yeah.
Like they're superheroes. They're supposed to be secret. Like
yeah.
Is any of them actually secret? Like how many people do know who Spider-Man is? How many
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Batman, for another Batman, coming back to Batman, but as far as like love interests go, there's pretty much been Selena Kyle, and then back in like the 80s and 90s, you had Vicky Vale.
Right.
Vicky Vale, of course, was in the 89 movie, but they kind of did her backwards in that for whatever reason. But with very few exceptions, Batman keeps his secret identity pretty secret. Right. And as far as just casual love interests have gone, those have been pretty much the only two that he's just come out and told, by the way, I'm Batman. And right. Vicky Vale was a big deal because Vicky Vale loved Bruce Wayne, hated Batman.
Right.
So when he told her, it was a big thing. But in the movies, whoever the love interest happens to be in this edition of the movie, at some point in time, they're going to find out that what's under that mask, and that needs to stop.
Well, it needs to stop, one, because it's not comic book accurate, and two, I'm a woman, and I will tell you 110%, and this is not anything against my sex, but if I know the secret identity of a man who then dumps me for whatever reason, and I'm gonna tell people that stuff. Like, yeah, it's just a thing. Anybody?
You're talking about a billionaire. There's going to be some extortion going on or something, some blackmail.
Unless he has them sign a non-disclose order beforehand. Like
this isn't going to work out anymore. Okay, great. So how much are you going to pay me to not run to the papers right now?
No, it's a thing. It's seriously a thing.
These are movie scenes that have happened off screen that I want to see someday.
People do not take breakups well. Women
do
not take breakups well. Men don't either. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being sexist, but I'm just saying, like, if a billionaire breaks up with you and, you know, for God knows whatever reason, a Bruce Wayne, Batman reason, so non-committal and should be committed kind of reason. Um, and this about him, you are going to either get money, you're you're going to tell something,
Yeah.
you're keep a secret. The identities need to be a little bit more secret. We talked about Infinity War and the whole Avengers storyline and the fact that Natasha is called Natasha throughout the whole thing and not Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about Hawkeye is only called Hawkeye once or twice?
They call him Hawkeye in Thor when he shows up in the first Thor. During the Battle of New York, in a completely blink and you'll miss it line, Black Widow says something about Hawk, they're coming your way. So she calls him Hawk.
Right.
Same thing with Black Widow when they're lifting Thor's hammer in Age of Ultron. When when Bruce Banner asks Natasha if she wants a turn, he says, "How about you, Widow?"
Right. And then
so it's like casually they'll say it, but the rest of the time it's Natasha, it's Clint, it's Barton, or whatever.
Which just doesn't make sense. Or Scott, they call Scott Lang Scott all the time. They don't call. And I'm
right.
sorry, it's just something you wouldn't do. Like if you're a superhero and you have superhero friends who are protecting the world, but you want to keep them safe, you're not going to call them by their real names.
That's why I say the MCU is not only are they like exceptionally guilty about it, but to actually go as far to have that one line in Far From Home. Everybody here already knows you, Peter. You can go ahead and take that mask off. It's just, oh God, it's bad enough that he's got it off to 90% of the movie as it is. You don't have to tell him that it's okay to take it off. It's annoying.
Oh, I know.
I mean, you've got two types of people that goes to see a comic book movie. And this is going to kind of tie into one of our later points as well. But like people who grew up reading these comics and are fans of that character, or people who don't know anything about the character and just thought it looked like a cool movie, or they're fans of the franchise, so they just want to see this chapter because it's part of it, or whatever, that type of thing. So unless you are one of these people that don't know anything about the character, if you went into it and saw your actor's face like once or twice throughout a 2-hour movie, are you seriously going to leave confused? Doubtful. You know who they are. They are the character that's on the poster.
Right. So why don't we skip the other one, the one that's next, the Jubilee one? Why don't we go to the next point? Because what you just said kind of goes into the next point. Because you already know who the character is. You come to see a movie, it's Spider-Man, Far From Home.
You either already know who the character is, or you're coming in completely blind. And if you're coming in blind, it's because you thought that character looked interesting from the trailer. So, that being said, dear Hollywood, stop the origin stories!
It's true.
Ugh.
It's true because the thing is like, we talked about this. There have been a couple movies that did origin stories as part of the story, but it wasn't the whole story. You were talking about the Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk did it beautifully. Like we saw, it was like, you saw the old TV show, you saw the Ang Lee thing. So we already know the story. So they show the entire origin during the opening credits. Right. Beautiful. 2 minutes, done. Go on with the movie. Right. Or like, say, you've got some like, say, Deadpool or something like that, where it kind of flashes back and shows it to you in chunks.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We can see how somebody becomes a character as long as two things. One, that's not what the movie's about.
Right.
Because who cares? You want to see Superman beating up bad guy. You don't want to see 3-hour trip to Earth from Metropolis and 20 minutes of Superman.
Right.
You want to see, we know for the most part, except for some of these smaller characters, we know the story already.
Well,
get on with it.
Yeah.
I like how they did Spider-Man this time around. We've already had Spider-Man twice in the last 20 years, so we didn't need to see it again. He was already Spider-Man when we met him.
I love that. We were talking about Wonder Woman, and yes, they go into the origin for a little bit, but it's more of like her leaving her home and going out into the Wonder Woman. But
we saw her as a child for a scene, but like she was already Wonder Woman. She just didn't have a costume yet.
Right. And so that one is, I don't have a problem, and I'm the same way as you. I don't have a problem if they like show parts of it, or if it's the first like 15 minutes of the movie, or whatever. I don't want an hour and 30 minutes of watching Clark Kent grow up on a farm, and then 30 minutes of him being Superman. I don't want that. I've come to save the world. Plus, it also has the issue that we were talking about. It's one of our other issues, and it's like, it's not really one of our issues, but we're going to touch base on villains here in a minute. But it leaves so much room that you could have put villains in there, that you could have put some, like, you can't, if you read a comic book in the first, like, say it's a 40-page comic book, and the first 35 pages are just of him figuring out his thing, and then the last 5 pages are him fighting somebody, one, you're not going to know anything or care anything about who he fought. You're not. And two, it's going to be like, okay, where's the next comic book? Because you're going to want to see the story continue. We already know these people.
Yeah, the second issue is going to either have to be the most epic thing ever, or no one's going to care.
Right. And so, since we already know these characters, there's no need to spend half a movie or even longer on the origin story of a character we already know. Like, it's just necessary. If it's
I mean, you could, like, you mentioned Ant-Man a minute ago, so like just Ant-Man shows up in Hank Pym's office and he's like, hey, you remember that time I broke into your house and you gave me a suit? That was fun. Good times. All right, let's go.
Right.
We don't care.
Because then they have to do 2 movies. They have to do 2
well, and like I said, it's, you take Deadpool, for example. So Deadpool starts out, he's already Deadpool, but then it goes back and shows you a little bit. Comes back to the present day, we see some more of the current story. We go back and we see a little bit. Fine, because you can break up the monotony that way. That's a good way to do it. Or if you can somehow, and I'm trying to think of a good example and I'm drawing a blank here, but like if you can somehow make the origin story part of the overall story of the movie, so that the movie isn't about the origin. Like Man of Steel. I mean, we're like an hour into that movie or more before we ever actually see Superman step out of that place in costume. Batman Begins. I think it's 48 minutes before we ever see Batman. But at least that one is called Batman Begins. So you know that what you're getting into there. But yeah, it's annoying.
Or anything like the Wolverine origin story or First Class, like you're going into these things knowing you're going to get the backstory. So you already know you're going to get the backstory. Okay, so they're making the backstory the story. Batman Begins was about him becoming Batman. Wolverine's story was about how he became Wolverine. Like so you're going into it knowing it's an origin story. You're not going into it expecting it to be a superhero movie, and then like halfway through you're like, when is he going to start doing something? Or is she going to?
And that's the problem with a lot of superhero movies, is like you almost have to have the sequel to actually tell the story that you want to tell. But if the first one doesn't do well enough, then you don't get a sequel. So you've got to somehow make that origin as exciting as possible. Now, Marvel's been getting smart about it with at least a handful of their characters. So like Spider-Man, Black Panther, they introduce them in other movies and be like, hey, here's this new character that we've got here. Now you're already hooked on the character. We can go back and we can show you a little bit about who they are, whatever. So the beginning of Black Panther, we explain that story in the first 2 minutes of the movie, and then we go.
Well, Wonder Woman did the same thing. She came in Justice League, Batman versus Superman.
Right.
And then she came in. So like you see Batman versus Superman, she's just a minute, like just a little cameo of it was important, but it's like, okay, now we know Wonder Woman. And so if you don't know the character, but you're following these storylines, then you go and if you're like me, you read about the character and you're like, oh, cool. And so you don't need
Yeah.
like an hour and a half of origin story because you already know it. So
See,
yeah,
these things are supposed to be like almost 2.5 hour long advertisements for a comic book character. So
right.
that's how they should do it. Be like, here's this story with this character in it. Want to know more? Here's a comic book shop. Go in, pick up a couple of editions, find out for yourself.
Yeah,
That's a good way to get kids reading comics again.
It is. Okay.
Problem solved.
So I think we're gonna keep the Jubilee one for the very end because if we have to go off on X-Men,
I think we go ahead and hit that one. Honestly, the last point needs to be the last point.
Okay. So the worst thing, the thing I hate the most about comic book movies,
and we're gonna touch on X-Men here. Caution.
We're gonna stick with one part of the X-Men thing that we hate, but is when they take characters, whether it be villains or the heroes and stuff, and they morph their like personality and their traits with another character, but you still have the other character on screen, which is an X-Men thing. But I don't like that.
Rogue in the X-Men.
Rogue personality of
was like 1 part Rogue and 3 parts Jubilee.
Yeah.
And then Jubilee was also there.
Yeah, it's weird. Rogue was not supposed to be the same age as Jubilee and the kids. She's supposed to be younger than Storm and Jean and Wolverine, but she's more contemporary to them than she is to the kids.
You have like Scott and Jean and Storm, or well, not even Storm really, but Scott, Jean, Beast, Iceman. Those guys were the first class. Rogue would be like second. Rogue and Storm would have kind of come in around the same time. So but I would still picture her to be a little bit younger than that. Yeah. So it'd be like Storm would be tier 2, Rogue would be like tier 2.5, not quite tier 3.
Yeah, and they also took her. Rogue is a badass. Like,
oh god, yeah.
In the comics, she is, but they made her this kid who everybody wanted to protect, and Rogue wasn't. She had issues because everything she touches dies, but it wasn't about that in the comics. It wasn't this little kid. It was a grown woman who's having these issues. It wasn't a teenager who's having these issues. The relationship between Wolverine and her is more the relationship between Wolverine or Gambit and Jubilee. It's a cop out. And then you have Jubilee as a throwaway character in the same movie. You took her personality, you didn't make her Asian, and
Jubilee, with the exception of like First Class or Origins Wolverine, or I think those may be the only two. But with the exception of those two, Jubilee has been in every X-Men movie as an extra.
I know.
Except for I think she finally got some lines in Dark Phoenix. But yeah, she's been in every single one of the movies, even though her character was meshed with somebody else.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I don't like it when they mesh, and they do it with villains a lot.
Oh god, yeah.
They take personality traits, or they mix the actors' personalities with the villains so much so that it's not the villain anymore. It's somebody playing the villain. I
mentioned Man of Steel a minute ago. Man of Steel did this in a way that is really confusing to me. So you've got your Clark Kent, you've got your Lois Lane. Well, then at the Daily Planet, you've got Perry White, and then you've got, I forget the guy's name, but there's a guy, and then there's a girl named Jenny. So you actually have two people that take the place of Jimmy Olsen.
Right.
Jimmy Olsen isn't there, unless you've seen the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, in which Jimmy Olsen gets killed in the first 5 minutes. So they removed Jimmy Olsen, killed him off, and replaced him with two people that do his job.
Yeah, no, I know. I know.
Why not just have Jimmy Olsen there?
It bothers me so much.
Yeah,
Why? And
but there's too many just extra characters for that matter in general. I mean, this kind of goes back to the previous point, but like I mean, wait, was this something we were going to touch on? I don't remember. Yeah, it is. Never mind. Actually, it's our next point. So I mean, I guess we could just kind of roll into it if you want to, but
no, we'll roll into it.
I can't really think of any other good examples of like where they combined two characters, but
Or not even just the mesh. We called it the Jubilee conundrum, by the way.
yes.
But where they like take a character and throw them away, but they use part of it. But they also do it. I wouldn't call this part the Jubilee part, but they also do it where the characters that are being portrayed aren't the characters that should be portrayed. Like the Joker is known for this, like so many times. The Riddler, Jim Carrey's the Riddler. I know you have issues with it. I see your look on your face. Um, and I don't want to pick on Batman because all comic book movies have, not all of them have all these issues, but all of them have at least one of these issues. But Batman's really good about this because he has such a big rogue gallery, and so does Spider-Man. That they,
Yeah.
but I don't like it when they take a character like the Joker, and everybody has their favorite Joker of how they've been portrayed, but none of them have been portrayed comic book
Not a one.
correct.
And the controversial thing here is that the one who has actually come the closest to playing Joker comic book accurately is Jared Leto, and that's sad.
Like I love Jack Nicholson, but he played Jack
Jack
Nicholson
Nicholson played that character beautifully. Unfortunately, the character wasn't the Joker.
right.
Heath Ledger played the character beautifully. Unfortunately, that character also not the Joker. And
Right.
another controversial thing is I don't think half as many people would think that his performance was so iconic if he had not died. It was a great performance, don't get me wrong. It was beautiful, don't get me wrong. But the fact that he died skyrocketed that through the roof.
Okay, guys. So my computer just died, which means if you're commenting, nobody's commented so far. I'm trying to get it booted back up, but nobody's commented so far. But if you're commenting, it'll take me a minute to see that. But, yeah, no.
So anyway, we're talking about extra characters. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. Extra characters. That being, so this is our next segment, which we are entitling "Love Does Not Conquer All."
Right.
Do we really need, with the exception of like, say, Lois Lane or Hope Van Dyne or Peggy Carter, Mary Jane Watson? So I mean, there's a few, but beyond those few, do we need to have a love interest in every single freaking movie?
No.
You're stuck with me now. Just me
Are.
and Michael Myers over there and Freddy up there. But yes, every single Batman movie has also included some type of a love interest for reasons. I mean, Vicky Vale made sense. She's from the comic books. Catwoman in Batman Returns, okay, fine. Selena Kyle, sure. But Talia al Ghul, okay, fine. Didn't work the way that it did in the comic books, but I digress. The fact that beyond those, you should see like random model on Bruce Wayne's arm at function. And that should be as far as a love interest goes for every movie. Kind of what we mentioned earlier, remove any kind of love story from the movie, and that's movie time that you could be devoting to, oh, I don't know, fighting a bad guy or something, doing superhero things or something.
The thing is, you
It's
have
not
to
necessary.
have, right. Ow, ow, sorry, wrong hand. Still have the broken elbow, guys. The thing about it is you have to have some characters. A Spider-Man movie without an MJ or without a Gwen wouldn't make sense. But you don't have to have them fill up most of the screen time. Like they can just be there. You
Yeah.
don't you can have Wonder Woman needed her love interest to fulfill her full power, but it's not a necessary thing now. Like
Right.
I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
how,
that was the case in the 40s. But
but so he
I mean,
died.
you've got Peggy Carter stayed in the past. Oh, so all the way through from Captain America: The First Avenger all the way through Endgame.
Yeah,
While he may not have had a love interest, they still teamed him up with Black Widow for pretty much all of those movies.
right.
And I mean, there was a couple of times where it was like little buddy cop things with him and whatever. But like, so he's a really great example because several times they still team him up with Black Widow and have them flirt so that there's still some type of a love interest story going on here. And this is just simply movie time being wasted for
Right.
no reason.
Well, and the thing is like, so take the Hulk. Like he doesn't have like Natasha. He has a thing with Natasha, but in any movie, like any comic book, most of the time the Hulk is known for not having a love interest because
Except for Betty,
yeah,
who's kind of a love lost, wants to have her back but can't have her type of thing.
exactly. Um, you have, I think, the probably one of the best portrayals of a love interest in a comic book movie that I've seen. That is weird because it's a big deal, but they don't go on screen as much as you actually think. If you go back and you watch all the Iron Man and Avenger movies, Pepper Potts and Tony Stark are not on screen together a huge amount.
Right.
They in the Iron Man movies they are more, but in the Avenger movies it's more about the team.
Sure.
But you still know he has this love interest. You still know he's in love with her. She's still there. You just don't
But I
see
mean,
her.
is there seriously some demographic that would just be, would you lose that many millions of dollars from some demographic that's going to see comic book movies for the love story aspect?
Right.
Really? It doesn't make sense.
Right. And
But
that's
that's
the
just
thing.
one little quick little beef.
Yeah, it's not a huge thing. It's just like sometimes they want to throw them in there. And there have been lots of comic books that I've read that, yes, those people have a love interest, but they're not a big part of the story unless like the love interest gets captured and they have to go save them. That's a Lois Lane thing. It's a
Yeah.
very much a Lois Lane thing. Okay. Well, we're 37 minutes into this, and we were worried we weren't going to have enough to talk about.
So we should probably move along.
We should. Now,
Villains. Wash, rinse, repeat.
oh my god.
My personal favorite title. Yeah. So you said earlier that Batman and Spider-Man have the biggest rogues galleries and the most interesting rogues galleries. I would also like to throw the Flash in there with that, but we don't have a Flash movie yet. So
right.
we're going to look at Spider-Man and Batman. Actually, let's just look at Batman.
Okay.
Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, Jared Leto, Joaquin Phoenix. Now we're looking at another one.
Yeah.
The Joker is tired. Let it go. Good God. I would love to see a good Mr. Freeze. I would love to see Clayface. I would love to see Professor Pig, Victor Zsasz, somebody, those two. God, you could make the darkest, creepiest Batman movie ever using either of those two. Mad Hatter. I mean, there's so many characters that have never been done.
They could literally take one or two villains, team them up if they've ever been teamed up and stuff like that. One or two villains of Batman or Spider-Man and make 100 movies with them. There's that many. Like
you could put out a Batman movie per year using a different villain every single movie and not use the Joker again for like a good 20, 30 years.
Right. And you could even go further than that. You could. But like I hate it when they always have the same villains. And Batman is huge about this. How
Yes.
many women, Catwoman have we seen? Now, not all of them are Selena Kyle Catwoman, but oh my God, how many Catwomen? Um, I'm just tired of it. I just
I,
want
I
to.
am so excited and so nervous for this new Batman movie because the Riddler is supposed to be the main bad guy in it.
Which
And
you
they've
love.
cast Paul Dano, who I love as an actor. Would not have been my choice for it. Honestly, was not somebody I had ever even considered for the part. But oh my God, do I love it. And
Right.
from what I have always said, from what I've heard from this movie, it sounds like this is what they're doing. And I have always said you could make a Batman movie with the Riddler in it that would basically be Batman meets Saul.
Right.
And that would be the Riddler. And it sounds like that's what we're getting. And I am so excited for this. They may finally get the Riddler right.
Right.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
I'm just excited because they also said that they're going to be. There's also rumors that there's going to be a lot more rogues in this one.
Yeah.
Like they're
Well, cameos from them, yes.
yeah, but they're going to touch base on them. And I mean,
Right.
everybody loves Harley and everybody loves the Joker and everybody loves,
Yeah.
like Catwoman. But oh my God.
That's what's great about this movie is it seems like Catwoman is going to be there to be more of a sidekick for Batman, which great. Riddler is the main bad guy. Penguin is a secondary bad guy, and Riddler's like muscle basically is Firefly,
Yeah.
a character I never thought we would see in a movie. Firefly. I mean, great.
I wish they would expand their horizons and not just go with what was really popular with villains and with sidekicks too. Like there are so
Okay.
many sidekicks or people who came in to help. They might not be like technical sidekicks, but they're like friends of them. And there's so many that are. If we do Spider-Man, we talked about doing Ben Riley. I would love to see a movie with
Well, how we got to that was like just casting as far as movies go. You had Tobey Maguire, who was a pretty decent Peter Parker, but a terrible Spider-Man. You had Andrew Garfield, who was a terrible Peter Parker, but a somewhat decent Spider-Man. He would have been great if at the end of this last movie it was suddenly revealed you're not Peter Parker, you're Ben Riley.
Right.
That would have been great. I could see that. Ben Riley is like Peter Parker plus douchebag.
Right. Garfield would have been perfect. It shouldn't have been an origin story. He would have been perfect as Peter Parker, as a college age Peter Parker. He did not fit that kid. We were talking about our casting, and this isn't on our list, but we were talking about casting because that's a big thing. So many movies get it wrong, especially superhero movies. And I was telling Spru, my favorite, and the one that I think got it more right than any other cast was Tom Holland as Spider-Man, because
Agreed.
Holland in person,
Well,
everything.
RDJ and Tom Holland, I would put those two pretty close together.
Just so good, and
Yes.
Tom Holland is Peter Parker.
And speaking of Peter Parker, we're talking about doing Green Goblin again, or at least Norman Osborn again. It's like, I mean, same thing as the Joker. Let it go. We haven't had as many, granted, but let it go.
Right. I love.
There's so many Spider-Man villains I want to see.
Say that they've only done one Green Goblin, but they did his son, so
They've done two.
You know what I mean?
Or three. They've done three.
Yeah.
They did two just in the Tobey Maguire days alone.
I know. It's just it's frustrating because he has so many great villains.
Oh yeah. Well, now that he's been outed as being Peter Parker at the end of Far From Home, if Kraven isn't the bad guy of Part 3,
I know,
then somebody at Marvel screwed up.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so speaking of villains, wash, rinse, repeat.
Oh
Um,
God.
this one is a big one for you. You hate this. I hate
Stop.
it too, but go ahead.
So yes, there are tons of villains that we have never gotten, and the ones that we have gotten have been good, mostly. Mostly.
Yeah,
More recently than not, but yeah, sure. So stop killing them.
right.
Maybe you want to use them again someday. Just a thought.
Well, because when they kill them, one, like, then if they do come back, you have to try to explain that. Two, it or they just redo the story again, and that's another origin story or another story that's already been told. I don't want to see Batman versus the Joker 100,000th time. I want to see Batman versus the Scarecrow. I want to see Batman versus,
Right.
I don't know, anybody else.
Which there was stories of like great movies never made. If you ever read the story of what Tim Burton's Batman 3 was going to be, it was called Batman Triumphant. And it basically, or wait, was this part 3? No, this was crap. I forget if this was the Burton trilogy or if this was what was supposed to come. No, this is what was supposed to come. I forget. Anyway, this is what was supposed to come after Batman and Robin. I think. Anyway, it was going to bring in Scarecrow and Harley Quinn as the bad guys, but in a creepy twist, a very creepy twist, Harley Quinn was going to be the Joker's daughter. That's creepy. But it would have actually brought back Jack Nicholson in a cameo. And that would have been a great way to bring everything full circle.
I mean,
Weird, but sure.
no.
I mean, if there's one character that the comic books have proved more than once that just because he's dead doesn't mean by any means that he's going to stay that way, it's the Joker.
Right. But see, Batman doesn't, like, Batman's whole point, like, this is why I love Nightwing, because Nightwing, I would love to see a Nightwing movie, but Nightwing
Starring
doesn't have,
Jared Padalecki.
Nightwing doesn't
Jared
have
Padalecki is Nightwing. Please give it to me. I want it
people.
now.
And doesn't. He puts them away, they escape. He puts them away, they escape. That's the whole comic book. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like, he puts them away, they escape. He puts them away.
Batman is a terrible. You could have an entire episode on just how Batman is terrible for Gotham. Absolutely terrible for Gotham.
Or how Arkham Asylum is just like the world's, like,
worst.
People escape from that thing so many times. Oh my gosh. But no, they shouldn't kill off the villains unless it's like,
unless it's somebody who died in the comics and you want to go that route. Okay, fine. But like, I mean, Thanos, he's dead now. Twice. You killed him twice. I mean, sure, there could be a Thanos from another generation or another universe that could come over. But Thanos is somebody who keeps coming up a lot in the comics. So to just be done with him forever, that's a bad idea. I mean, you're talking about the dude that brought you, the biggest box office numbers in history. Maybe you want to keep him in your back pocket. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, they can always do the alternative timelines to fix that.
Yeah.
Anybody back.
But, oh my God, there was one of the early scripts for Endgame when the 2014 Thanos shows up to he blows up the mansion and everything, and he's there to fight everybody. Like how that scene was going to begin was.
Do you see what he's posted?
Harley Quinn is the Joker's daughter, but Harley Quinn was Joker's girlfriend. Now it's punchline. Yes, but in this movie, it was going to be Harleen Quinzel as his daughter, which is just weird. Different character. This was like the Joel Schumacher days, and yeah, that's its own set of problems. But this early script of Avengers Endgame, so Thanos shows up in the present and he like blows up the mansion and whatever. And whenever he comes walking out and they come out to face him, he tosses a skull that's wearing Captain America's mask and explains that in his timeline, he already killed the Avengers, all of them.
Oh.
I'm like, that, you should have kept that. That would have been amazing. But they were like, oh, it's too dark and kids will be upset and I've got a gnat flying around. Anyway.
Okay.
But yes, that would have been awesome.
We did discuss this. It's not on our list, but because we still have a little bit of time and we only have like one more to go. But we discussed it, and it can go into the next one very well. Is how dark they can go with some of these comics. And
oh God, they should go dark with some of these.
You're talking about mass murdering, serial killer, crazy people as villains most of the time. Not all of them are. We have our anti-heroes. We have the ones that want their thing, but they don't want to destroy everybody. But the really bad ones are like, Victor Zsasz. Like seriously,
Fox was on the right track. I mean, they tested the waters with R-rated features. They did extremely well pre-Batman the Animated Series. Maybe we're talking about a different character then. I'm not sure who you're talking about. Hello. Unless you're talking about like Duella Dent or something like that. But this was just in that one particular movie that never got made and it was creepy. But like I mentioned earlier, like I would love to see a Batman movie that solely focused on like a Victor Zsasz or Professor Pig would be amazing. But you could do the creepiest, darkest horror movie-esque. I mean, even Hush for that matter. I mean, a guy who steals people's faces. I mean, you could go extremely dark with that. And this new movie they say that they're taking a lot of hints from Hush and from like Long Halloween. And thank you. Big fan of you too. I've actually been watching you guys. We'll talk about you guys here in a little bit. I've been watching your show too. But I would love to see, well, and even the Riddler for that matter. Like I said, it would be Batman meets Saw, and I would love to see that. So I think that they should. I mean, it depends on the character, obviously, but yeah, they should definitely go to it.
I feel like with Batman, especially, they could go so dark. They could go so dark just based on his rogue gallery. They could go very dark. Plus, it's Batman. If they did a movie, you could pull from Batman's rogue gallery people you don't want Batman to go against and have Nightwing do it, and it could be amazingly dark. I would love that. I would love anything dark. Keith says Professor Pig would be awesome.
Yes, he would. One of the most underappreciated Batman villains out there. I've very often considered cosplaying as him.
I would love that. That would be amazing.
Just walk around singing opera all day and see who gets it.
That would be beautiful. So we've just talked about like the things that some of the points that we've like dislike about what they've done wrong or what we feel they've done wrong with making some comic book movies. Not all comic book movies hit all of these. But almost every single one of the ones on our list, you can go to almost any comic book movie and one of them's on there. One of them.
Yeah.
Even just the fact that their identity is not as secret as it should be, or they don't wear their mask, or their names, they're called by their real names, or whatever it is. So with that being said, we had
I think the MCU got very, very lucky. And they still have these problems, but they got very lucky with Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
Kevin Feige is a man that not only plans way ahead, but he genuinely loves the characters.
Right.
And that's that's the problem. I mean, you've got Tim Burton is a perfect example, who, back in '89 made, what is still considered to be one of the best Batman movies, and yet he absolutely refused to read the source material.
Right. And
Refused.
We're both big comic book fans. You and I both. Like, my house has comic book walls. I've read comic books since 1980. I know you're right around the same.
Pretty much.
And since I could read, I've been reading comic books. And we're huge fans of comic books. I have my favorites. You have your favorites. The problem that we have is that the people making the movies don't understand or love the characters.
Or even know anything about them.
Right. Our last point is, do you want to say what it is?
We call it the nerd FUBU. The nerds for us, by us. If you hire somebody if you bring somebody in and you're like, we're considering you to direct the new, Batman movie. How many Batman comic books have you read? And they're like, well, I mean, I've seen the movies. They're like, yeah, okay, you know what? Never mind. We'll move on to the next guy. Bring in people who genuinely have a love for these characters. That's why I'm so excited for the Matt Reeves Batman. Matt Reeves is like a die-hard Batman fan and has been reading Batman like his entire life.
So
I feel like if anyone's going to get Batman right, it's going to be him.
He says he loves
can't wait.
Not a fan of the MCU filmmakers. And then
Fox was the worst. That's why we didn't go into X-Men. We didn't talk about X-Men specifically because it would have to be its own episode.
We were discussing X-Men. We were discussing all this on our way home today, from going to do some things and run some errands. And all the way home, we were discussing this, and it kept bringing up X-Men. And we realized that we talked for like 2 hours in the car about X-Men, so we knew
about X-Men.
We couldn't do that here. It might be something else that we talk about later on or something. I would love for
join us next week when we discuss.
But
when we bring all these problems back to X-Men.
All of them.
And then some. Casting, writing, ideas, the fact that Magneto seems to be the only bad guy you've got in your entire universe. Don't get me started.
But the problem is these movies were not that the people who made them, they weren't fans, but they don't love the characters. That's the reason Deadpool did so well. Because not only the person making the movie, but the person portraying the character loved the character so much.
The only reason that movie even got greenlit was because that test footage leaked out, and it was later admitted that Rob Liefeld, the guy who created Deadpool, and Ryan Reynolds were the ones that leaked it out.
Yeah, because they wanted it to be made so much. And that's what we need, passionate fans who are... There's enough of them to make these films. I would love the X-Men to be made into a TV series. We talked about that last week.
I would rather see it as a TV series that's connected to the MCU, but not actually movies.
Right. I mean, so Keith has that to say.
Agreed. Yes, he was. Ow.
But
something bit me.
Something bit you? Wasn't me?
I felt like something bit my leg. I don't know. I was just out in the woods, so that was anyway.
So we need movies made by fans. We need scripts written by people who've read the comic books and love the comic books and want to keep these characters what they were. If you want to change it a little bit, that's fine. Don't change them so much that you don't recognize the characters anymore.
Well, if you change something, it should be something that simply won't really transfer from page to screen. If you want to do something along those lines, fine. That's absolutely fine. It's absolutely understandable. But don't make changes just because you don't know the character well enough and that's how you want to make the changes.
Here's what Keith has to say about it. Keith, you should have joined us in this conversation.
Right?
next time you'll come on our show. um, no, it's a thing, and I just really going forward, seeing all the money that's been made and seeing the successes of the ones that are success. Um,
Amen, brother.
their successes because they're being made by people who are passionate about the project and passionate about the characters. And um, unless you have that passion and that knowledge of the characters, don't make the freaking movie. I love Tim Burton's vision and a lot of stuff. What pisses me off so much about almost any Tim Burton movie that's made from like a book or a comic or whatever, he never
He
reads
won't
them.
read it.
He
Yeah.
won't. He refuses to. So I want because he wants to bring his vision to it. Okay, but they're already set. We already love them for a reason. And when you change it up, it hurts the integrity of that character because now
Right.
the don't know the comic books and then they watch the movie and then they read the comic books and they're like, "Well, I don't understand why the Joker's like this. He wasn't like this in this movie." Well, yeah, or the Riddler. I don't understand why the Riddler's not weird like Jim Carrey and all that stuff. And
Jim Carrey never played the Riddler.
I know he didn't.
Jim Carrey played a terrible version of the Joker while dressed as the Riddler.
Yeah. Keith, no, you would just add to our chemistry. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know chemistry. Like on
Sometimes
screen.
an outsider's opinion is exactly what's needed to mix things up.
Yeah, I can't argue with this one too much because he gets very heated.
See, the chemistry would be even more heated if because like we're literally in the same house, just in different rooms.
Yeah, I'm in the
See,
living room.
hang on a second.
He's getting people I don't think know this, but see this?
Hi.
That's my boyfriend. So yes, we have good chemistry, but we also invite people into this conversation and stuff like that. There you go. Did you read that one? The
King and Queen. Oh, you mean was it a flyby? Superman flyby? I've read like breakdowns of it, but I haven't like read the actual script. Is it online? Because I would like to read it if it is.
yeah. Keith, if you know if it's online, let us know because he does that all the time. He reads scripts that never made into movies and stuff
Yeah,
like
I'm
that.
going to be doing a breakdown of the Colin Trevorrow script from Star Wars Episode 9. That would have been such a better ending to the Skywalker saga, but that's a story for another video. One that I already made.
Okay, guys, so we're at
Hour and 2 minutes of 50 seconds.
we are. Apparently, we're adorable. No, I'm adorable. No, see, now you got him going. Oh my god. Yes, it's online.
Sweet.
So that's what he'll be doing for the next couple days. I know that now. So guys, we are gonna wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Keith, thank you for commenting. I really, really love it when everybody comments. It gets us something to talk about. I mean, we have our points, but it helps bring in some things, and we like to hear your point of view as well. Speaking of Keith, here we go. You can check out Keith and Gary at Pop Culture Minefield, and that is going to be on YouTube. They're also on Facebook. Keith's been doing some lives and stuff like that. And we've been watching those. I don't comment as much because I've been watching them while I've been doing other things. Keith, I'm sorry. But go check them out. Now, they're not as kid friendly because Gary does tend to
It's
use
a lot like this, but dirtier.
Yeah. But seriously, so entertaining and informative, and they know so many people and they have great guests. So go check them out. We also have another great group of nerds that we love, Tim and Josh over at Nerd Informants. They're on YouTube and Facebook, and they bring you like nerdy news, geeky news. They do movie reviews when there are new movies out. Right now, there's not new movies out, so you know. But they're
Makes it
keeping
really
it.
hard to come up with video ideas.
What?
Makes it really hard to come up with keeping up with video ideas.
Yeah. And speaking of keeping up with video ideas, the Skallywag himself is. You can find him on YouTube. Oh my God, or
Yarn
Instagram,
party.
or Facebook, or Twitter, and that is Skallywag Productions on YouTube. You can find him on Facebook, and he has all the links to all of his stuff, so you can go check that out. He shares like collectibles of the day, so everything you see behind him, and then some of the things behind me, he posts those every day. And he does video breakdowns, he does commentary, he does weird things like you never, yeah, you never know
Do
what.
weird things? What are you talking about?
Oh, wait, I have more comments here. Hold on. Okay. So that is Superman Fly.
Superman Flyby, yeah.
He says Gary is the star. I would disagree with that. I think you both are stars, so you know. And he says like, I'm just some guy.
I'm just some
And
guy.
also loves the Nerd Informants. Yeah, they're great guys. I used to play D&D with them and stuff like that. So, but yeah, go check them out, guys, and be sure to check everybody else out. But don't forget us. We currently, our website is down, and that is GeekyKOOL.com. It's down. We're looking for another host. Professor's been working, but he had the house problems as well. So this week has been very hectic for him, and that's why he's not here tonight. But it should be up probably, hopefully by next week. If not, there will be updates on our Facebook page. But you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And I've been sharing things on Facebook, and this will be on there, and this will be on our YouTube. We do have a YouTube. It's just these live streams from, you know, I'm on all of them except one, and I'm sorry for that. Poor people. But yeah,
You
go
know
check.
what? I actually just had an idea. Remind me, just had an idea that I should toss pie you.
Okay. I will remind you in a minute that you had an idea. Oh, wait. Look, Keith says he loves you.
Love you too, Keith.
I am just surrounded by such talented men. I know it sounds weird. I have some
Hey,
girls
we
who
need to invite them to the thing. By the way,
we'll invite them to the thing.
yeah.
But guys, we
Keith,
love,
watch your inbox for an invitation.
yeah, we love talking to you guys. We love talking comics, movies, all kinds of nerdy, geeky things. And you know, if you guys have a topic you want us to discuss, or you would like Shpoo to do on his YouTube, or you have some points that you're like, this would be interesting to talk about or write about, send them to us. If you want to write for GeekyKOOL.com, we're always asking for contributors. Just hit up Larry Lytle on Facebook or message the Geeky Cool page. And I will tell Professor that you miss him. He's probably going to be watching this here in a minute. He's moving today, and so that is probably why he's not here. Actually, I know it is why he's not here. But I asked Boo to come in, and so I wasn't just talking to myself. That would be bad. But I love you guys, and check us all out, and have a good day. Do you have anything to say?
Indeed. What? Just I thing. Yeah.
Thing. Okay.
Check out my YouTube channel. Check out the other guys as well. Yeah. So like I say at the end of all my videos, you know, thank you guys so much for stopping by. See you next time.
Bye, guys.